The message came early in the morning, sharp and out of place, like a crack in glass you can't ignore.
Mom.
Be at our house tonight. 7 p.m. We need to talk. No, please.
No explanation.
Just that. I stared at my phone longer than I should have. My son Daniel had never been the type to send cold messages like that. If he wanted something, he usually called. Which meant one thing, this wasn't just him. This had her fingerprints all over it.
Clara.
My daughter-in-law. In the 7 years since she married Daniel, she had perfected the art of politeness that hid something colder underneath. Everything she said sounded reasonable, thoughtful, logical, but there was always a quiet calculation behind her words, like she was constantly rearranging pieces on a board no one else could see. And somehow, lately, I had started to feel like one of those pieces. By the time I pulled into their driveway that evening, the sun was already sinking behind the trees. Too many cars were parked outside. Daniel's SUV, my younger son Ryan's truck, my cousin Linda's sedan. Even my brother Thomas was there. That wasn't a family dinner. That was an audience. And then I noticed who wasn't there.
Sophie.
My granddaughter. My late son Andrew's daughter. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Clara opened the door before I knocked, smiling like she had been expecting me down to the second. Elizabeth, she said, her tone overly warm. You're here. I checked my watch. Exactly 7. I said 7. I replied calmly. Not early. Her smile tightened just slightly, but she stepped aside. The living room had been rearranged. Chairs lined up in a half circle. The couch positioned in the center, like a stage.
For me.
Daniel stood near the fireplace, pacing. He looked uncomfortable, more than uncomfortable.
Guilty.
Mom, he said, giving me a quick hug. Thanks for coming. I didn't sit yet. What's going on? Before he could answer, Clara stepped forward, taking control like she always did. Why don't you sit, Elizabeth, she said, gesturing toward the couch. This might take a little time. I stayed standing for a second longer, then slowly took my seat. That's when I realized. This wasn't a conversation. It was a setup. Clara remained standing. We've called this meeting, she began smoothly, because we need to discuss your property. My property. The land. 80 acres of quiet countryside in northern Georgia. Land my father had left me. Land my husband Robert and I had built a life on. Land where I buried him 6 years ago, beneath the old maple tree near the creek. What about it? I asked, though I already knew. Clara didn't hesitate. We think it's time you sell. The room went completely still. I felt it before I reacted. The slow, heavy drop in my chest. Daniel stepped forward quickly. Mom, listen. But I raised my hand. No, I said quietly. Let her finish. Clara nodded, as if she appreciated my cooperation. It's too much for one person, she continued. You're alone out there. It's impractical. And frankly, the value of that land right now is none of your concern. I cut in. Her smile flickered. Daniel exhaled sharply. Mom, please. We're worried about you. Worried. I repeated. Or interested? Ryan shifted in his chair. Liz, we're just saying it's a lot of work. I've been managing it just fine, I said. For years. Clara stepped closer. This isn't about what you can do, she said softly. It's about what makes sense. Financially, she added. There it was. I leaned back slightly, studying her. And what exactly makes sense to you, Clara? She didn't miss a beat. That land is worth nearly $3 million, she said. And right now it's just sitting there. Meanwhile, Daniel and I are trying to expand our business. Ryan has debts. The family has needs. The family. I almost laughed. Say it clearly, I said. You want me to sell my home so you can use the money. Daniel stepped in again. It's not like that. Then how is it? Silence. I looked around the room. Thomas avoided my eyes. Linda stared at her hands. Ryan looked torn. And Daniel looked like a man standing on a line. He didn't know how to step off. Then Clara said it. Stop being selfish, Elizabeth. The word hit harder than I expected. Selfish. After everything. After raising 3 children. After holding that family together when Robert was sick. After burying a son. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger.
Clarity.
You want to talk about selfish? I said slowly. I stood up. That land has been in my family for over 70 years. My father worked it. My husband built on it. I gave my entire life to it. Clara crossed her arms. And now you're holding on to it out of sentiment, she said.
No, irraplia.
Out of purpose. I reached into my bag. I was hoping I wouldn't need this tonight, I said. I unfolded the document carefully. My will is already finalized. That got their attention. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I said, meeting Clara's eyes directly. The property has already been assigned. To Sophie. The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel's face went pale. Ryan blinked. Thomas actually leaned back in his chair. Clara froze. Sophie, she said. Andrew's daughter?
Yes.
But, she stammered. What about your sons? They will receive what I believe is appropriate, I said calmly. But the land belongs to Sophie. Daniel stepped forward, shaken. Mom, why wouldn't you tell us this? Because, I said, it was never up for discussion. Clara's composure cracked. That's completely unfair, she snapped. She's barely part of this family. I stepped toward her. She is my granddaughter. The room held its breath. And unlike some people, I added quietly, she's never once tried to take something that wasn't hers. Clara's jaw tightened. This isn't over, she said. Yes, I replied. It is. I picked up my bag. And this time no one tried to stop me. As I walked out, I heard voices rising behind me, arguments, accusations, but I didn't turn around. Not once. Outside, the evening air felt colder than before, but clearer. For the first time in a long while, I knew exactly where I stood, and exactly what I was protecting.
I didn't sleep that night.
Not even for a minute. The house felt different after I came back, too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath along with me. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the same spot where Robert used to sit, his coffee always going cold because he got distracted talking about plans, repairs, crops, anything that meant building something lasting. That was the thing about him, he never thought in terms of quick gains. Everything was about roots,
About time.
about what would still be standing long after we were gone. And now, sitting there alone, I kept hearing Clara's voice in my head. Selfish. The audacity of it almost made me laugh, except it didn't feel funny. It felt like something had broken open, something I hadn't wanted to see clearly before. By morning, my phone had already lit up with missed calls. Daniel, Ryan, even Linda. I ignored them all. I knew exactly what those conversations would be. Pressure wrapped in concern, manipulation dressed as reason. Around 8 a.m., a message came through from Daniel. We need to talk. Clara didn't mean it like that. I stared at it for a while before setting the phone face down. I wasn't ready to hear excuses.
Not yet.
Instead, I did what I had always done when life became too loud. I went outside. The land stretched out in front of me, quiet and steady as ever. The early light caught the tops of the trees, turning everything gold for just a moment. The fence line needed checking, so I grabbed my gloves and tools and started walking. There was something grounding about physical work, the weight of the hammer, the rhythm of movement. It didn't fix anything, but it made things clearer. I was halfway down the east field when I heard the sound of a car engine. I didn't need to look to know who it was.
Clara.
Her SUV rolled slowly up the gravel path, stopping too close to the fence for my liking. She stepped out carefully, like the ground itself might stain her shoes. Even out here, she looked perfectly put together. Hair done, clothes pressed, like she was heading to a meeting instead of a farm. "Elizabeth," she called, forcing that same controlled smile. "I thought we could talk. Just the two of us." I kept working for another second before straightening up. "I think we said everything that needed to be said," I replied.
She walked closer anyway.
"Last night got emotional," she said. "We all just want what's best for you." "No," I said calmly. "You want what's best for you." Her expression tightened slightly, but she pushed through it. "That's not fair. You're looking at this the wrong way. That property is an asset, and right now it's being wasted." "Wasted," I repeated, letting the word sit between us. "Yes," she said, more firmly now. "You're one person managing land that could change all of our lives." I leaned on the fence post, studying her. "All of your lives," I corrected. She exhaled sharply. "Daniel is under a lot of pressure. The business isn't doing as well as you think." "Then he should fix his business," I said. "Not mine." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, and that was all I needed to notice something deeper beneath her composure. "There's more to it than that," she said quietly. I didn't respond. I just waited. That silence made her uncomfortable. "We've taken loans," she admitted. "A lot of them. And if we don't secure more capital soon. So, you decided my land was your solution," I said. "It makes sense," she snapped, her voice rising. "Why should all that money sit there while your own family struggles?" I stepped closer. "Because it's not your money." For the first time, her mask cracked completely. "You've always favored Sophie," she said bitterly. "Everyone knows it." The accusation didn't surprise me, but it did anger me. "Sophie is my granddaughter," I said. "My son Andrew's child. She is as much a part of this family as anyone." "She's barely around," Clara shot back. "And yet she gets everything? She gets what was always meant for her." Clara shook her head, pacing slightly now. "This isn't just about inheritance," she said. "You're making decisions that affect everyone, and you're doing it alone." "Yes," I said simply, "because it's my decision." She stopped walking. Then she said something that told me everything I needed to know. "You don't understand how serious this is." I tilted my head slightly. "Then explain it to me." She hesitated. Too long. That was the moment it clicked. "You're not just in debt," I said slowly. "Are you?" Her eyes flickered. "Elizabeth." "How much?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. A cold realization settled in. "This isn't about business loans," I continued. "This is something else." She turned away, running a hand through her hair. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Another pause. And then quietly, "I lost money." "How much?" She swallowed. "More than we had." I felt my grip tighten on the fence. "Gambling?" I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a bird called out. Everything felt strangely calm compared to what had just been revealed. "Does Daniel know?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "And he can't." I let out a slow breath. "So that's what this is," I said. "You're trying to sell my home to cover your losses." "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that." She stepped closer, desperation now replacing her earlier confidence. "If he finds out, it will destroy everything," she said. "You don't understand what this would do to him, to us." And you think this won't? I asked. She looked at me like she wanted me to agree, to bend, to make it all easier for her. But I didn't. You need to tell him, I said. I can't. Then I will. Her head snapped up. You wouldn't. Watch me. For a moment, I thought she might argue again. Push harder. Manipulate the situation like she always did. But instead, she stepped back, afraid. And that told me more than anything else. At that exact moment, another car pulled into the driveway. Daniel. He got out quickly, looking between us. What's going on? He asked. Clara immediately moved toward him, slipping her arm into his like nothing had happened. Nothing, she said smoothly, just trying to talk things through. I almost admired how fast she recovered. Almost.
Daniel looked at me.
Mom, I met his gaze steadily. We were discussing honesty, I said.
He frowned, confused.
Clara squeezed his arm.
It's handled, she said.
Don't worry about it.
But I saw it then.
The doubt. Small but there. And once doubt exists, it doesn't go away. As they drove off, I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty driveway. Everything had changed. This wasn't just about the land anymore. This was about truth, about control, about how far someone was willing to go when they were desperate. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't over. Not even close. The shift didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, quietly, the way rot starts beneath the surface of something that still looks whole from the outside. At first, it was just fewer calls. Daniel, who used to check in every Sunday without fail, suddenly became busy. Ryan stopped dropping by altogether. Even small things changed. Messages unanswered, conversations cut short, a strange tension creeping into every interaction. I told myself it was temporary, that people needed time to cool off after what happened at the meeting. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't distance. This was something being built. Something intentional. About a week after Clara's visit, I went into town for supplies. I hadn't planned to stay long, just the hardware store, maybe groceries, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The looks. The kind that stop just a second too late when you turn your head. The kind that pretend not to be watching but absolutely are. Two women near the counter lowered their voices when I passed. A man I'd known for 20 years nodded at me, but it felt forced, uncomfortable. And then I heard it. She's not been the same since her husband passed. I kept walking like I didn't hear it, making strange decisions. That one hit closer. They say she's isolating herself. I stopped in the aisle, staring at a row of nails I didn't need, my jaw tightening. So that was it. Clara had started her campaign. By the time I reached the register, I didn't even care about the supplies anymore. I paid, walked out, and sat in my truck for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel. It wasn't anger that filled me first. It was something colder. Something sharper. Calculation. If she was spreading this narrative about me being unstable, irrational, then she wasn't just trying to pressure me anymore. She was preparing something. When I got home, the phone rang before I even set my keys down.
Nancy.
My sister-in-law. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Elizabeth, she said, her voice careful, like she was stepping onto thin ice. I just wanted to check in on you.
Ai fine, he replied. A pause.
That's good to hear, she said. There's just been some concern. From who? I asked, though I already knew. Well, Clara mentioned.
Of course she did.
What exactly did Clara mention, Nancy? I asked, keeping my tone steady. Another pause. That you've been having a hard time, she said. That you've been making sudden decisions. About the property. About the will. I leaned against the kitchen counter, closing my eyes for a second. And you believe her? I asked. It's not about believing anyone, she said quickly. We're just worried. Daniel is worried.
No, I said.
Daniel is being told to be worried. That's not fair. No, what's not fair, I cut in, is having my own family question my sanity because someone wants what I own. Silence. Then, more quietly, she said you accused her of gambling problems. There it was. She has gambling problems, I said plainly. Nancy inhaled sharply. Elizabeth, it's the truth. She said you were making things up, that you've been paranoid. I laughed then. A short, humorless sound. Of course she did. Nancy hesitated again, and I could hear it in her voice. She didn't know what to believe. That was the worst part. Not that Clara was lying, but that people were willing to consider that those lies might be true. Look at me, Nancy, I said, even though she couldn't see me. Do I sound unstable to you? No, she admitted. But what? But this situation, it's getting complicated. It was made complicated, I said. On purpose. After we hung up, I stood there in the kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I did something I should have done sooner. I called Martha. She had been my lawyer for over 20 years, but more than that, she had been my friend since we were teenagers. If there was anyone I trusted to see through this clearly, it was her. They're setting the groundwork, she said after I explained everything. For what? I asked, though I had a feeling I already knew. To challenge your competency, she said. The words landed heavy. They're trying to prove you're not capable of making your own decisions, she continued. If they succeed, they could petition for control over your assets. My grip tightened on the phone. You're telling me my own family is trying to legally take my property from me? I'm telling you, she said carefully, that this follows a very specific pattern. Isolation, reputation damage, questioning mental stability. It's not random. I felt something shift again inside me. Not shock this time. Recognition. What do we do? I asked. We get ahead of it, she said. Documentation. Records. Evidence of your mental clarity, your independence, your intent. And Elizabeth. Yes. Do not engage emotionally with them anymore. Everything from this point on, assume it could end up in court. I exhaled slowly. Understood. That evening, I started writing everything down. Every conversation, every phone call, every visit, dates, times, details. If they wanted to build a case against me, I would build one stronger. 3 days later, something happened that made everything even clearer. A car pulled into my driveway. I didn't recognize it at first. Then the door opened, and Sophie stepped out. For a second, I just stood there, staring. I hadn't told her anything.
Not yet.
I wanted to protect her from all of this. But somehow, it had reached her anyway. Grandma, she said, walking toward me quickly. Are you okay? I pulled her into a hug before answering. She smelled like the same coconut shampoo she'd used since she was a kid, and for a moment, everything else faded. I'm okay, I said. What are you doing here? Don't you have classes? Spring break, she said. Then her expression changed. And Uncle Daniel called me. Of course he did. What did he say? I asked. She hesitated. That you're not doing well, she said carefully. That you've been making strange decisions about the land. I felt a slow, steady anger rise in my chest. He said that. I asked. She nodded. And that you might need help. I stepped back slightly, looking at her. And what do you think? I asked. She didn't hesitate. I think that's not true. Relief hit me harder than I expected. He also said, she continued, that you're giving the property to me. Is that true? Yes, I said. But it's not new. That decision was made years ago. She looked surprised. Why me? She asked quietly. I smiled, though it wasn't an easy one. Because your father loved this land, I said. And because I trust you to understand what it means. Her eyes filled slightly, but she nodded. I won't let you down, she said. I know, I replied. We stood there for a moment, the wind moving softly through the trees. Then she said something that made everything even clearer. Aunt Clara has always wanted your things. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? She used to argue with Mom about it, Sophie said. About your heirlooms. About what she thought she should get. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So this hadn't started recently. This had been building for years. Are you in trouble? Sophie asked softly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not a child but someone strong. Someone steady. No, I said. But I am in a fight. She nodded once. Then I'm staying, she said. And just like that, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The letter arrived 3 days later, tucked between ordinary mail like it didn't carry the weight of everything that was about to unfold. Plain envelope. Official stamp. No warning, no courtesy, just a formal notice printed in cold, clinical language. Cognitive evaluation scheduled.
Date. Time.
Location. My home. I read it twice, then a third time, slower, letting every word settle in. They weren't just talking anymore. They had moved forward. Quietly.
Strategically.
And they hadn't even told me. I stood in the kitchen, the paper still in my hand, and for the first time since all this began, I felt something close to fear. Not panic, not weakness, but a clear, focused understanding of what I was up against. This wasn't family conflict anymore. This was a legal attack. I called Martha immediately. She picked up before the second ring, and I didn't bother with greetings. They scheduled an evaluation, I said, at the house. Monday morning. There was a pause on her end, then a sharp exhale. That's fast, she said. Too fast. Did you recognize the doctor's name? I read it off the page. Another pause. Longer this time. I know her, Martha said finally, her tone tightening. And I don't like this. That was enough to confirm what I already suspected. She works with a firm that specializes in these cases, Martha continued. They don't get involved unless someone is pushing hard behind the scenes. I didn't need to ask who. So, what does that mean? I asked. It means, she said, this isn't a neutral evaluation. It's an attempt to build a case against you. By that afternoon, Martha was at my kitchen table, papers spread out, her usual calm replaced with a focused intensity one hadn't seen in years. With her was another man, older, sharp-eyed, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime in courtrooms. This is Richard Hayes, she said. Retired attorney, elder law specialist. He shook my hand firmly. I've seen this before, he said without preamble. Family disputes that turn into legal takeovers. It's rarely about concern. It's about control. I nodded. That's what this feels like. He sat down, folding his hands. Then we don't treat it like a family issue anymore. We treat it like a case. The next few hours blurred into strategy, documentation, medical records, financial independence. Every detail of my life laid out not for understanding, but for defense. We're going to challenge the evaluation, Martha said. Conflict of interest, bias. We'll demand an independent specialist. And if they push forward anyway? I asked. Richard leaned back slightly. Then we make sure you're more prepared than they expect. There was something steadying about the way he said it, not reassuring, not soft, just certain. Sophie sat quietly at the end of the table, listening to everything. She hadn't said much since the letter arrived, but I could see it in her face, the shift from concern to resolve. When Martha stepped outside to take a call, Sophie finally spoke. They're really trying to do this, she said, almost to herself. Yes, I replied. They are. She looked up at me, her expression firm. Then we don't let them. It wasn't said like a question. It was a decision. The weekend passed in preparation. Every drawer opened. Every document reviewed. I answered questions I never thought I'd have to answer about my memory, my routines, my decisions. It was strange being examined like that, as if my entire life had suddenly become something to prove. But I didn't resist it. I leaned into it, because if they wanted to question my clarity, I would show them exactly how clear I was. Sunday night, the house felt heavier than usual. Not quiet, tense, like the air itself was waiting. I checked the locks twice before going to bed, something I hadn't done in years. Around midnight, headlights swept across the walls. I froze for a second, then moved toward the window slowly.
A car. Parked near the driveway.
My heart picked up, but not from fear, from anticipation. I knew who it was before I even saw him step out. Daniel. I opened the door before he knocked. He looked different. Tired. Unsteady. Not drunk exactly, but worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. "Mom," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, glancing around like he hadn't been there in years instead of weeks. He sat down, then stood again, pacing. "They canceled the evaluation," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "Your lawyer," he said. "She threatened something. I don't know what, but the doctor backed out." I exhaled slowly. Martha had moved faster than I realized. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Clara's furious," he added. "She says you're manipulating everything." I almost smiled. That's ironic. He stopped pacing, looking at me. Really looking this time. "Is it true?" he asked. "About her?" I didn't pretend not to understand. "Yes," I said. "It's true." He swallowed hard. "She says you made it up. Do you believe that?" I asked. He didn't answer. That was enough. We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing in. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. "The business isn't doing well," he said. "We're in trouble. And then the debt," his voice trailed off. "So, you thought taking my home would fix that," I said. He flinched. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. "We just needed a way out." "At my expense," I replied. He didn't deny it. "And the development plans?" I asked. His head snapped up. "What?" "Don't lie to me, Daniel," I said. "I know you've been meeting with developers." The shock on his face was real this time. "How do you? Because I'm not as alone as you think," I said. He sat down heavily. "It was just an idea," he muttered. "Nothing was signed. You were going to tear it apart," I said quietly. "Everything your father built." That hit him. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped. "I didn't think that far," he admitted. "That's the problem," I said. Another long silence. Then he looked up. "What happens now?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. "That depends on you," I said. "This can stop. Right here. No more lawyers. No more lies. No more pressure." He listened, but I could see the hesitation. "And Clara?" he asked. "Clara needs to tell the truth," I said.
To you.
"Not to me. I already know it." He nodded slowly, like the idea itself was heavy. "My lawyers are still moving forward," I added. "And once that starts, I won't be able to control where it goes." He stood up after that, quieter than when he arrived. "I need time," he said. "You don't have much," I replied. He left without another word. After the door closed, I didn't move right away. I just stood there listening to the silence settle again. Something had shifted. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to crack what had seemed unbreakable just days ago. Sophie stepped into the room a moment later. "Is he going to do the right thing?" she asked. I looked toward the door. I don't know, I said honestly. But now, I added, he has a choice. And that was something he didn't have before. The morning after Daniel's visit felt different, though nothing had actually changed yet. The same fields stretched out beyond the windows. The same trees stood unmoved. The same quiet wrapped around the house. But something underneath it all had shifted. Not peace. Not resolution. Just a pause. Like the moment before a storm either breaks or passes. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, watching the sunlight move slowly across the land, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to think about what would happen if this all ended. Not just legally, not just financially, but as a family, because that was the part no one had really said out loud. We weren't just fighting over land. We were deciding what kind of people we were willing to become. By midday, the waiting ended. Daniel came back. This time, he didn't hesitate at the door. He knocked once, then stepped inside when I opened it, like he had already made up his mind about something. He looked exhausted, but clearer. Focused in a way I hadn't seen in a long time.
I told her, he said.
I didn't ask what he meant. I told Clara it's over, he continued. No more pushing. No more lawyers. No more talk about the land. I studied his face, looking for hesitation. There wasn't any. And I asked. He exhaled slowly. She didn't take it well. I didn't expect she would. She tried to turn it back on you, he said. Said you manipulated me. That you were lying about everything. But he paused, then shook his head. I found the statements. There it was. How much? I asked quietly. 38,000, he said. Maybe more. I stopped counting. The number didn't shock me anymore. Not after everything else. She's been hiding it for months, he added. Separate accounts. Cash withdrawals. I don't even know how I missed it. I didn't answer right away. Because I knew the truth. We see what we want to see. Is she getting help? I asked. He nodded. She agreed to a treatment program. 30 days. Starting this week. That surprised me. But only a little. Do you believe she'll follow through? I asked. He hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. But it's the first honest thing she's said in a long time. We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us understanding what that meant. And the developers? I asked. I called them, he said. Told them the deal is dead. Something in my chest eased at that, not fully, but enough. Good, I said. He looked around the house then, slower this time, like he was seeing it properly again. I didn't realize how far things had gone, he said. Not until last night. That's how it happens, I replied. Not all at once. He nodded, then met my eyes. I'm sorry, he said. Simple.
Direct. No excuses.
I believed him. That's a start, I said. He let out a small breath, almost like relief, but I didn't soften completely.
Not yet.
Trust doesn't rebuild in a single conversation. What happens now? He asked again. This time, I had an answer. Now, I said, we move forward carefully. No more secrets. No more pressure. And no more assumptions about what belongs to who. He nodded. Agreed. And Daniel, I added, this doesn't go back to how it was. I know, he said quietly. After he left, the house felt different again, but not tense this time. Lighter, not healed, but moving in that direction. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift in ways I hadn't expected. Not quickly, not cleanly, but steadily. Clara left for treatment. Daniel moved in temporarily with Ryan, trying to untangle the financial mess she had created. The business didn't collapse, but it came close enough to force him to finally face it honestly. Ryan, for his part, started showing up again. Not with opinions, not with pressure, just presence. He helped fix the fence without being asked, stayed for dinner without checking his phone every 5 minutes. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Even Nancy called again, this time with a different tone, less cautious, less influenced. I think I misjudged things, she admitted. Yes, I said. You did.
She didn't argue.
Sophie stayed longer than she planned. She helped me with everything, planting, repairs, even going through old documents I hadn't touched in years.
But more than that, she listened.
Not just to what had happened, but to the stories behind everything. The land, the family, the history. One afternoon, we walked out to the far edge of the property, where the trees opened up just enough to see the hills beyond. This will all be yours one day, I told her. She didn't smile. She just nodded. I know, she said, and I understand what that means now. That mattered more than anything, because it was never just about ownership. It was about responsibility, about knowing what something costs, not in money, but in time, in sacrifice, in memory. Months passed. Clara completed her program. She didn't come back. Instead, she moved to Florida to stay with her sister. Daniel told me they were taking space, which usually means something closer to an ending than a pause. I didn't ask for details. Some things didn't need to be explained. The legal threats disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. Without pressure from Daniel, without the narrative Clara had been building, there was nothing left to support them. Martha still kept everything documented, just in case, but for the first time, it felt like we were no longer reacting. We were stable, and slowly, carefully, the family began to rebuild. Not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. About a year after that first meeting, the one that started everything, I decided to host a dinner.
Not a meeting.
Not a discussion. Just dinner. Everyone came. Daniel, Ryan,
Nancy.
even Thomas. Sophie sat beside me, quieter than usual but observant, taking everything in. We ate outside on the porch, the same place Robert and I had spent countless evenings talking about everything and nothing at the same time. The air was warm, the light soft, the kind of evening that made everything feel a little more possible. At some point, the conversation faded, and I stood up, not because I had planned to, but because it felt right. I want to say something, I said. They all looked at me, not tense this time, just listening. This land, I began, has been part of our family for longer than any of us have been alive. It has seen more than we ever will. Good years, hard years,
Loss. Growth.
everything. I paused, letting that settle. And for a while, I continued. I thought we were going to lose it, not because of money, but because we forgot what it actually meant. No one interrupted. No one argued. So this isn't just about keeping the land, I said. It's about remembering why it matters, and making sure we don't forget that again. Daniel nodded slightly. Ryan looked down at the table. Sophie just watched me. To family, I said finally. They raised their glasses. To family. Later that night, after everyone had left, Sophie and I sat on the porch in silence, watching the sky darken. You didn't just save the land, she said. I shook my head.
No, iraplia.
I protected it. She leaned her head against my shoulder. There's a difference? Yes, I said. Saving something means it was almost gone. Protecting it means you made sure it never would be.
She thought about that.
I'll remember, she said. I know, I replied. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and walked out to the highest point on the property. The air was cool, the sky just beginning to lighten. For a moment, everything was completely still. And then the sun broke over the horizon.
Slow. Steady.
Unstoppable. Just like it always had. I stood there, feeling it, Not just the warmth, but the certainty of it. This land had endured everything thrown at it. And so had I. And for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to fight. Only something worth keeping.